We're going to start off with what we would call a yeshiva shechakira. A yeshiva shechakira. What exactly is that? So I still have memories of going to a very traditional Shabbos Shuvah Drasha, Shabbos Hagadol Drasha. I have memories from both. And when it comes to the Shabbos Hagadol, I remember going with my late father, Olav Shalom, to the drasha of the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim, of Rabbi Yitzchak Kolitz, Zatzal. And although historically the goal of such an evening was to remind everyone of the many important halachos that relate to Pesach, it became an opportunity for great rabbinic thinkers to share their personal insights. Sometimes it would be an analysis of a text of Maimonides, where Maimonides does not present to us the sources for what he is saying. So the great rabbinic mind would try to somehow find in some reading of the Talmud what Maimonides tells us. So there are different approaches to what we view Shabbos Hagadol. So I'm going to start off with a question that would be more typical for the traditional Shabbos Hagadol Drasha. And it works as follows. You know, often we have the ability to begin mitzvos of the next day prior to the next day. Right? For example, we need to daven Ma'ariv, right? We need to daven, say, Shema at night. So technically speaking, according to some, we could even say the Shema before night from Plag HaMincha, an hour and 15 minutes, depends, it fluctuates, before sunset. So it relates to many areas in Jewish law, obviously not what we're going to be discussing tonight, but it relates to it, for example, for Kriyas Megillah. There were authorities that allowed, in situations of need, to have the reading of the nighttime Megillah even before dark. Lighting Hanukkah candles, you could light in situations of need before dark, even though it applies to the next day. And so too, during the summer here, we daven Ma'ariv before dark. Now, the question is, what if you have a boy, a young boy, who is going to have his bar mitzvah at night, right? So he was born on the 7th of Nisan, for example. So late afternoon on the 6th of Nisan, 45 minutes before sunset, he goes ahead and davens Ma'ariv, and mission done. Everyone else davens Ma'ariv 45 minutes before sunset. It's after Plag. Now comes the question, when nighttime arrives, does he have an obligation to daven again? Because perhaps he davened as a minor. So this is a question that's addressed by halachic authorities. So the general approach is that what you do as a minor doesn't work. You're not obligated yet in mitzvos. Fine. Now the question is going to be, wait a second. We know that when it comes to the Paschal Lamb, to Korban Pesach, we have the ability to go ahead and make it up in a situation where for whatever reason I couldn't bring the Korban Pesach. I was far away. I was traveling, right? I was in quarantine, whatever reason you present. So then I have the ability to bring it a month later on Pesach Sheni. So Maimonides tells us that you should know if there is a child who has his bar mitzvah between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. So in such a situation, he would be obligated to bring Pesach Sheni. In other words, due to the fact that he did not have the status of an adult on the first Pesach, and he did have the status of an adult on the Pesach Sheni, so therefore he is obligated to bring Pesach Sheni. Fine, that this is good material. 10 years ago, we celebrated our son's Moshe's bar mitzvah, and he was born between Pesach and Shavuot. So the bar mitzvah material that was discussed, perhaps for a drasha, related to this idea. It also relates to the question, if he started counting the Omer as a minor, can he continue counting as an adult? So these were discussions that existed at the time. But what you need to know for now is, according to Rambam, he would be obligated to bring the Pesach Sheni. However, and here's the surprise, Ve'im shachtu alav barishon. What if this minor, right? He was almost bar mitzvah. His father made him a participant of his Paschal Lamb, and they slaughtered the Paschal Lamb and had him in mind. In such a situation, he's not obligated to bring the Pesach Sheni, even though he was a minor on Pesach Rishon. So the question, and this is a question I'm asking, and obviously I want to get to a point. The question I'm asking is, if he was a minor on Pesach Rishon, how on earth can the offering of the Paschal Lamb that included him cover him and release him from an obligation on Pesach Sheni? So that's the question I have, okay? And the answer I would like to present, and this is obviously an answer that tells us a lot about Pesach and what it's really all about. You know, in life, there are things we need to do for now, right now, right? If I am thirsty, I need to drink now. And it's fine. It's a good thing to do to take care of yourself. I'm hungry. I need to eat now. Hopefully, have a little bit of self-control that even if dinner is delayed, you don't get in a bad mood. But the idea is there are things we do for now. We have needs now to do. Now, there are things that I plan for next week, right? If I want to schedule a meeting with someone, so I'll go on to the Zoom website and I'll schedule a meeting or a shoot, whatever it is. There are things I plan for next week. There are some things that we plan for next year, like a vacation, right? Forget about a vacation in the near future. Vacation is next year. That's the reality. Now, then there are things that we plan. There are things that we plan for retirement, right? You go ahead and put aside in your RRSP or whatever TSFA, whatever account you have, you set aside a little bit for retirement. Okay, that's how we work. And then obviously we do things because as good Torah Jews, we believe in a concept of Olam Haba. We do things for ourselves, for the neshama after 120. Now, there are things that are all about the future in this world. A good Torah Jew is not just thinking about himself or herself for their spiritual welfare. They think about the fact that I want to do my part in being sure that Judaism is alive and well 50 years from now and 100 years from now. What am I doing? What am I doing to have Torah Judaism alive and well in this world in the future, in 100 years from now? And it's a question that every single person must ask. And every single person can make a contribution to it in one way or another. That's what Pesach is about. In other words, when it comes to a mitzvah of Kriya Shema, for example, it's an obligation I have today, and I take care of it today, and then tomorrow is another day. So therefore, you could have this debate and discussion when the child said Kriya Shema, or he read the Megillah and it was before sunset. Does it work for the next day or not? Because it's an obligation that relates to a set time. On the other hand, the night of the Seder is all about the future. It is about the future. It's the night that we really create that chain for the next generation. And the incredible ability we have to go ahead and do something at our Seder that was done by previous generations. If anyone does anything at their Seder that they saw by a parent or a grandparent or by a teacher, because there's continuity through teaching as well, welcome to creating that link to the future. It's incredible what we do. The Seder night and the Korban Pesach, which is really at the heart of the Seder night, it's all about the future. And as a result, you look at a child differently on the Seder night. When throughout the year, when you look at a child, at the girl that's 11 or the boy that's 12, you say he's not obligated yet with mitzvos. But you look at them completely different at the Seder night, because whatever you do, it's for them. It's really so. Whatever you do, it's for the future. It's the night about the future. And that's how I understand Maimonides' Rambam statement. When a child participated with the Korban Pesach, with the Paschal Lamb, on Pesach, even though he was a minor, he is released from Pesach Sheni, because mission accomplished. So I would like to give, as a result, a title for our Shabbos Hagadol Drasha. And that is the transmission of emotions of Judaism on the Seder night. So we're going to talk about the different emotions we have in our practice of Judaism. And yes, we got to tell our kids about them. We need to tell our kids about these feelings that we have about Judaism. And that's what the Seder night's about. So what I would like to do is, I would like to walk through our maror, our matzah. I would like to walk through also the Korban Pesach and different stages of the Paschal, of the Korban Pesach, different stages of the evening of the Seder night, and talk about the emotions of the Seder night. You know, if you are inspired by trees, which I am, I've discussed this in the past. So I think often of the fact that there are many, many leaves on trees. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, think about in November on your driveway or your backyard here in Toronto. There are lots of leaves. They are magnificent in late November and October, but then they become a little bit annoying towards come November. They're everywhere, leaves. Now, a leaf in tradition teaches us a lot. A leaf in tradition teaches us a lot, and it works as follows. You know that we view our existence here in this world as one that could achieve incredible things, right? We could do some, we live, we maximize our usage of this world, and we could compare ourselves to the fruit of the tree. The tree has a trunk, the tree has branches, the tree has leaves, and there's the fruit, right? The fruit, the goal, what it's all about. What is an apple tree all about? The apple. But then there are many leaves, and the leaves serve obviously a purpose in nature, but they're not the essence of what a tree is about. And so too in our lives, there are things that we do that are like leaves. They serve a purpose, but it's not the core goal of existence. And then we have moments of fruit. And as a Torah Jew, it has to be the fruit and the purpose, just as the purpose of the tree, of the apple tree is the apple, so too the purpose of our existence has to be those spiritual moments, those moments of meaning, those moments that we're doing an act of kindness, when we're connecting with others, connecting with our tradition, connecting with our Creator. So yes, to relax a couple minutes, that's fine. But remember, that's the leaf. If you go ahead and enjoy watching a hockey game, and that gives you a little bit of a relaxation, as a result, you're able afterwards to go ahead and perform acts of kindness, call someone, study Torah, daven. Remember, the hockey game is basically a leaf or a falling leaf sometimes, right? That's what it's all about. Keep that in mind. Now, maybe that's why they're called the maple leaves. Now, unfortunately, there are people that suffered in life, suffered, and they are, due to the difficulties that they went through, they have a lot of leaf moments. They can't really have a life of appreciation because they went through the camps. They cannot go ahead and feel that this world is a place of beauty and where I see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where I feel him, because they suffered so much in their childhood, right? So for such people, they perhaps can view their life as a leaf, and then they look at their children and they say, you are the fruits. I'm going to go ahead and be sure that you grow up in a better environment, that you don't have to work as hard as I do, that you're not going to carry the burden and the suffering and the memories that I carried within me. And for a generation that has parents that went through the war, I assume you would agree that the parents did everything for the next generation. They wanted their children to be the fruit, and they felt like the leaf. Now, in no way can we minimize their spiritual accomplishment or they're the greatest tzaddikim, right? Anyone that went through the difficulty and still had faith are the greatest tzaddikim of all generations. We all know that. But when it comes to their existence here in this world, don't call it a fruit. It was a leaf. And the galut, and our whole human existence is full of those leaves. Now, it's very, very interesting. The word leaf, aleh in Hebrew, appears three times in the Torah. One time, the first time relates to the fall of humanity, the fall of Adam and Chava. And they re-enter into the world after they sowed for themselves, vayitferu alei te'ena. They used the fig leaves, meaning the way they entered into the world, and it was no longer a world of pure fruit, the fruit of the Garden of Eden, but it was more a world that they had to deal with the aleh, right? With things that are not ideal. They created, unfortunately, the fall of humanity brought forth the aleh. And then also, we are told that in the exile, when we are in the exile, V'radaf etchem, you know what's going to go ahead and cause us concern? Do you want to know what's going to cause us agony in the exile? Even kol aleni daf, even if you hear the wind blowing on a leaf and smacking the next one, you're going to turn around and be concerned you're being chased. That's what the exile is about, the Torah tells us. And it's again the aleh. The aleh, we can't reach that to come to complete fruition. We cannot go ahead and live a life of fruit in the exile. And the third time is when the dove comes back to Noach with a aleh zait taraf befia. Aleh, and Rashi points out that it was a leaf of a bitter fruit. The olive, it was the bitterness. Aleh always relates to the bitterness. And that's really, really our challenge in existence. And we have to transmit, and again, perhaps you'll need a psychologist, how to teach a child, how to teach this future adult, future practicing Jew, how to teach them about the fact that, you know what, there's some bitterness in our existence. You don't want to overwhelm them. A sensitive child, you cannot tell them that life is bitter. No way. Absolutely not. But there has to be some kind of indication that, you know what, the existence we live in today has bitterness. You know, we are concerned about humanity, right? Take the past year, and everyone's using that slogan, we're all in it together, right? And therefore, if there's a country like Sri Lanka or Congo that needs vaccines, obviously they deserve it before us in Canada here, because we are all in it together, right? You've heard the term, all in it together. And the truth is, when you walk in, I was not long ago, actually, walking in a public area, and you see everyone walking around with masks, And you say, you know what? It is true. We're part of the human race. And when I turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and I daven, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bring a refuah, that this plague should come to an end, I don't think only of myself and my family and my nation. I think about the world. We really do. So I'm walking in this public area, and I have my kippah, and I hear two people talking, and as they pass me, and I had a feeling that they were talking about me, but I was only able to pick up one word: Palestine. So it could be they happened to randomly be walking by me and have a conversation about names that were provided by the Romans on regions that they conquered. It's possible. Or perhaps they see me, a Jew, and what do they think? Aha, here's the evil Jew, because his people are causing agony, pain, apartheid to the Palestinians. So they had to make reference to it. And you know why there's a level of bitterness there? Because when I see that person that I don't know and will hopefully never see again, I think, you know what? I'm approaching you as a Jew that is concerned about humanity. I'm approaching it as someone that thinks beyond myself. And I really concern myself that you have the discomfort or perhaps the worry of this pandemic. That's how I view you, even though I don't see you. You see me, and what do you see in me? Palestine, the one that is taken away from Palestinians. That is bitter. That is bitter. There's a bitterness in being in exile. You know, we talk often about the importance of Yishuv HaOlam. When a person is involved in an industry that does good for the world, you are doing a mitzvah. And this relates to humanity. The human being who is working in the shoe store, and the human being who is collecting the garbage, and the human being who is serving as a police officer, they are all being osek b'yeshuvo shel olam. They're settling the world. Tremendous mitzvah. Now, we are participants in that mitzvah as well. And if you go to the workplace and you do something productive, I don't know if you work in a casino, it's considered osek b'yeshuvo shel olam. But if you are in other industries, be proud of the fact you are fulfilling the will of the Creator, and this is what He wants from humanity. But at the same time, there's a bitterness, because if we would be doing it in the land of Israel, if the person, right, who is, selling clothes, selling suits, selling hats, right, selling food, if the Jewish person would be doing it in Eretz Yisrael, he would be involved not just in Yeshuvot Shel Olam, but Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And there's a level of bitterness. Again, it should be the complete flavor of what life is about, but it's an awareness that we need to transmit to the next generation. You know what? There's a level of bitterness. Don't let this be the whole picture, but be aware of it. So that's one area. But moving on to the matzah, there's a statement in the Talmud that really, really bothered me. Really bothered me. The statement is talking about matzah. Matzah is identified as lechem oni, the bread of the poor man, right? The joke in Israel they use is that after you buy the pounds upon pounds of matzah that you need for your family on Pesach, you turn into a oni. That's what they say in Israel. The Talmud provides a list of insights that we could read into lechem oni. One of them is a matzah. It's a lechem that onim acharav varim arbenet. There's a lot of conversation over the matzah. Another statement is, and this one is halachic, that just as the ani doesn't have the ability to benefit from a full loaf, but gets a broken piece, so too when it comes to the matzah, we break it, right? So the broken piece symbolizes the lechem oni. And I mentioned it tonight. So Alan Katz said, well, when I get my matzah, hand matzah, they break it for me because it comes in a box and it's all It's all broken. They make a lechem oni. And they also make you oni because you pay so much. Fine. But I would like to share with you an insight. It's not halachic, but it's a Talmudic scholar. And when I read it, and I started thinking through it, it bothered me. And here it goes. It's a statement by Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Rabbi Yossi Haglili. And Rabbi Yossi Haglili shares with us the following. As you know, in the days of the temple, there was a mitzvah that 2 out of 6 years, you take a percentage of your food, of the yield of your field, you make your way to Yerushalayim, and you eat it in Yerushalayim. It's known as Ma'aser Sheni. So it's a tithe that's not given to anyone else, but rather you're supposed to take it with you or transfer the value onto money, take the money to Jerusalem, purchase the food in Jerusalem, spend some time there, be inspired. Ma'aser Sheni, and you're supposed to eat it with happiness. You're supposed to eat the food in Jerusalem with simcha. That's what we are told. Ma'aser Sheni is consumed in Yerushalayim where you are happy. Jerusalem is a city of happiness. When you're in Yerushalayim, you're supposed to walk around feeling privileged and happy. Okay? Now, the Talmud deals with the following question. A person has a field. He produces pounds upon pounds of wheat. He tithes the Maaser Sheni, transfers the sanctity to the money, and he carries the money with him to Jerusalem. Wonderful. He arrives in Yerushalayim, and it happens to be a few days before Pesach. So he has Maaser Sheni money in his pocket. So when he walks into the shuk and he wants to purchase matzos, and he hears that it's quite expensive, he says to himself, wait a second, I'm in Yerushalayim. I have money of Maaser Sheni. I'm supposed to eat food that was purchased with this money in this city. I'm going to purchase matzah. Sounds good, right? You're going to be using a lot of that money up very, very fast. Comes Rabbi Yossi Haglili. This is in Psachim, page Lamed Vav. En Adam yotze yedei chovato b'maaser sheni b'Yerushalayim. You can't fulfill. Doesn't work. So the seller selling the matzah, according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, asks the fellow, "Oh, you're using maaser sheni money? No good. Why not? What's the problem? Right? I can purchase anything else. I can purchase a falafel. Why can't I purchase matzah?" So Rabbi Yossi Haglili looks at the word lechem oni. Lechem oni. And at times, the rabbis change around for drashot, the ayin and the aleph, and they relate it and they read it as if the Torah is stating lechem oni, aninut. You know that lo aleinu, after a passing, the first day, a person is not called an avel, it's called an onen with an aleph. It's like an acute mourning period. Rabbi Yossi Haglili makes a drasha that matzos are lechem oni. It is bread of acute mourning. And therefore, since Maaser Sheni must purchase food that brings simcha, don't eat a matzah, because matzah is not a bread of happiness. It's a bread of aninut, of acute mourning. That's a statement of Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Now, he's not followed. But for me, this was disturbing to have a Talmudic scholar telling me that my matzah is a bread of acute mourning. Why is it? What in matzah relates it to aninut? So this is something I've been thinking about for some time. And I came out with the following explanation. You could reject it. You could hear it. It works as follows. We left Egypt with chipazon, in haste. It was a hurry. It's a big word, by the way, for our Passover, for a Pesach Seder. Chipazon, hurry, get out, fast. So, what's the idea really of the chipazon? So we had to completely detach ourselves from Egypt. You know, at one of the Verklach you hear every year about the Haggadah is that the Arizal used to say that we reached such a low spiritual level in Egypt that if we wouldn't have left immediately, we would have been lost as a nation. And it's known, they call it the level 49. It is as if there are 49 levels that take you down spiritually. You reach the 50, you're gone. And we were at level 49. Sounds like a good name for a store in a mall, right? Level 49 now. But that is what the Arizal tells us. And I think what the message of the Arizal is that we needed to detach ourselves completely from Egypt. Complete detachment. We took nothing from them. We had nothing to do with them. It was something you remove, and that's it. We're a separate entity. There was nothing. The ideal would be that there would be nothing left of Egypt in us and nothing of us left in Egypt. Complete detachment. Now that we know what chipazon is about, it was in haste. Just get out, yank it out. Nothing to do with one another, right? Not a relationship where there's a back and forth, but rather complete detachment. If that's what chipazon is about, listen to the description Yeshayahu gives, the prophet Yeshayahu gives regarding the future redemption. In the future redemption, we are told, Ki lo bechipazon tetzeu. The future generation is going to be very, very different. It's not going to be with a chipazon. Ubemenusa lo telechun. Don't think you're going to be running away. Why? Ki holech lifnechem Hashem, because God is going to be in front of you. Umeasfechem, and the one gathering you is Elokei Israel. In other words, Egypt, yes, was all about chipazon, but worry not about the future redemption. That's lo bechipazon. So what exactly does that mean? So what I would like to address is, number one, why Rabbi Yossi Aglili views this as bread of acute mourning. What exactly is the not chipazon of the future redemption? And let me tell you how this comes together. I, as a Torah Jew, believe in the value of humanity. You know, I have the ability to go ahead and say, you know what, yes, I'm chosen. And yes, as a Jew, I'm very, very special, and my people are special. But God loves all of humanity. You know, the world out there likes to shine negative lights on what happens in Israel. We're familiar with it. I read not long ago an article, unfortunately written by a Jew, and it appeared in Al Jazeera, and you can already tell what direction I'm going. And this Jew, I'm not going to mention his name because it's quite embarrassing that a fellow with the name Yoav could write such things. And he talks about Zionism as racist, apartheid, genocide. And that's the picture. When you see any time a picture of quote unquote settlers, that's the image and the vision the world wants you to have. Now, to appreciate a movement, you have to go to the heart of the movement, and you have to work with the history of the movement as well. And I think we would all agree that we would label Rav Kook, Zatzal, Rav Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, as the father of this movement, of love of the land, religious Zionism, seeing the hand of God in this process of redemption. Now, let me read to you the most beautiful statement from Rav Kook regarding humanity. And he says the following: a Torah Jew starts his life with ahava. There's love. But the love has to be of kol hama'asim kulam. You have to love everything. You have to love existence. You have to love this complex world we live in and just love it. And then he notes, then you go ahead and have to have ahavat kol ha'adam, A Torah Jew loves humanity. A Torah Jew loves all humans. You are concerned about all humans, right? I remember when a year ago, right, when this all started, and I was listening, to get a little bit of, I don't know if the word would be guidance or some clarity how to deal with it. So my yeshiva in Chicago, the Telz Yeshiva, sent a brief recording from the Rosh Yeshiva, the current Rosh Yeshiva, the son of the former Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shmuel Yehuda Levin. So he is a person I respect. He recently took over from his late father. And he's a very Haredi individual, very committed to Torah mitzvahs. But I was always impressed with his ability to see a little bit beyond it. So, he started off his little talk that I was listening to, where obviously we don't know what God Almighty wants from us. But he did mention perhaps there was a little bit of a flaw on our end, he noted, that months ago when we heard about an ailment, an illness that is killing people in China, that it did not bother us enough. Now, for me, it was important to hear, and it was nice to hear that here we have someone that's really in that box of Judaism, right? Haredi Jews, complete focus on the next generation of Torah scholars, but at the same time realizes that a Torah Jew has, in the words of Rav Kook, ahavat kol ha'adam, a love and concern for humanity. That's what we do. Now, Rav Kook adds, acharea, after you've developed the love of all of creation and the love of all human beings, only then comes ahavat Israel. But you need to know that your love of your fellow Jew and the love of the people of Israel is because they have the mission, letaken et kol ha'masim kulam. Love the Jew, not because they're my tribe, they're my people, no. Because they have the role in doing good at some point in the future to all of humanity. We, as Jews, must feel that connection to humanity. Yes, we protect ourselves. Boy, do we protect ourselves, that we preserve our identity. And we get an A+ on preserving our identity. Here I am, here you are, 3,400 years later, we're still around and functioning. The fences worked, but don't allow, God forbid, to allow those fences to prevent you from seeing humanity. When Yeshayahu Hanavi tells us the day will come you'll leave, lo bechipazon, it's not going to be a complete detachment of just get out of there as soon as possible, right? And a person is stuck in an elevator, and there's some kind of bad aroma, bad smell, or in a room, right? Or he's stuck in a washroom, and unfortunately it's overflowing. You want to get out of there because you want nothing left of that smell, right? You want to detach yourself completely. That was Egypt. In the future, lo bechipazon, it's not going to be a detachment. You could actually compare the Messianic era as a teacher in the back of the classroom, and he's making his way to the front of the classroom, not to get away from the students, but to turn around and start teaching. That's the Messianic era. Lo bechipazon, it's not a detachment. It is not a detachment. You know what it is? It's going to be that we make our way to the land of Israel and then turn to the human race and say, okay, let me guide you in what you should be doing because I'm concerned, because I am here to do good to the world. Letaken et kol ha'olam kulo. That's the Jewish mission. And I think with these words, I could really understand why Rabbi Yossi Haglili tells us, we look at the matzah, it's not a bread of complete happiness because you are remembering the chipazon, the complete detachment. You look at the matzah, and yes, it's the Jewish journey, no question about it. But the journey that started with chipazon has in it a ninut, a cute mourning. That's what Rabbi Yossi Haglili tells us. And it is a very important message that we need to transmit to the next generation, that for those, right, that Judaism is about Jews, wonderful, no question. Yiddishkeit is the focus on Jews. That's our responsibility. Number one is take care of your family, take care of your people, no question about it. Concern has to be for humanity. And when we transmit and we look at the next generation, and we look at a system of education, and we look at a curriculum in any school, it must have within it this understanding that matzah, important mitzvah, no question. But remember, don't be completely happy. You can't be completely happy with the matzah because it detached you from our ultimate goal. What we are really, really waiting for is for the moment of lo bechipazon tetzeu. So that's another emotion. We talked about telling kids about, yes, there's bitterness, but we also have to tell the children, you know what, next generation, please remember, preserve Judaism. Preserve it. It's incredible. It's magnificent. There's nothing like a Seder night. But remember, our concern goes beyond our people. The Korban Pesach, obviously, over the years, we've talked about the fact that it is a meat, it's a korban that we consume as royals. No, not the royals that talk to Oprah, but the royals that actually feel there's something important we are achieving, right? We don't eat the meat as the schlepper who breaks the bone to chew out the marrow. There's a status we walk in with it. The way we sit, the way we eat, that's the Korban Pesach. But what I want to get to is the following, that in many homes, and I think it's a tradition by all, that it's right after we finish the Hallel, we open the door and we make that declaration of Shvoch Chamoscha ala Goyim, right? We make that declaration. We make that declaration. We open the door and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should pour his wrath on the nations that don't know him. And obviously the tradition evolved where the Eliyahu Hanavi comes in and drinks from the cup. Okay, yes, no, probably no, but it doesn't make a difference. It symbolizes something. It doesn't mean when we pour a kosher Eliyahu, it's still a kosher Eliyahu, even if he doesn't come and drink it. I'm not sure if it's important or even a smart thing to teach the children this Baba Maisa that he comes and he drinks and the kids start asking or they start looking and they make it into lahavdil. I don't even say what you should be teaching the child as the kosher Eliyahu is a cup of faith. That Eliyahu Hanavi is going to one day come and he's going to tell us there's a Mashiach and there's going to be a journey back to the land of Israel and we're going to fulfill our mission there. And that's how we commemorate, by preparing a cup for the idea, not for the person. That's probably a much healthier way of working with this kosher Eliyahu. But what about the opening of the door? What exactly is the opening of the door? So some commentators note as follows. You know that the Korban Pesach, when it was consumed, it had to be within your chabura, within your group. You couldn't go ahead and become part of one group and then jump to another group. You had to stay within the group that you originally purchased, and then the Korban was slaughtered for you. So the door was closed. When they ate the Korban Pesach, what would they do? They would close the door. They would remain in their own group. When they finished eating the Korban Pesach, they would open the door. And the Talmud actually tells us that the tradition was to go up to the roofs. And just imagine the roofs of Jerusalem. Can you imagine the views if you have a nice house on one of the elevated areas of the old city and you could look out and see the mountains? The Hallel was said on the roof. This is a statement in the Talmud, that Halela Paka Igra. It would like break the roof. That's what the Talmud tells us. So while the eating of the Korban Pesach, you were within a house, and sometimes perhaps there were too many people in a small area. When they finished, then they would open the door, and it was basically saying, okay, now we are free to go to a more comfortable environment. They would make their way to the roof. Perhaps some commentators note that to commemorate the idea that we no longer are confined within our homes, the door is open. This is what's explained by some. Now, what exactly is the idea of doing it on the roof? Right? What's it telling us? So Hallel is really the peak of the Haggadah. It's sometimes interesting. I remember someone telling me that he was by someone for the Seder, and they're very much into it, but come the fourth cup and the Hallel, they're already out of it. You know, it's been a long night. You ate a lot. You ate matzah, not bad for the digestive system. It's already late. Really, I think the moment that we have to strengthen ourselves the most to get heavily into it, that our mind should appreciate what we're saying and what we are experiencing, is clearly the Hallel. You know why? The Hallel is that future of the people of Israel. It's the future when we go ahead and, you know what? Think about humanity. You know, the daf tomorrow, the daf yomi tomorrow, talks about two Hallels. There's Hallel and Hallel Hagadol. The regular Hallel and the big Hallel. Now, what's the regular Hallel? Well, that's the Hallel that talks about the Jewish journey. It talks about the Exodus. It talks about Kriyas Yamsuf. It talks about the Kabbalah Satorah. It talks about Eretz Yisrael. It talks about our personal journey. But then when we say Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Ki Lo Lam Chazdo 26 times, that is actually called Hallel Hagadol. You know why? You know why it's bigger? Because it goes beyond the people of Israel. It goes and it relates, and we express our gratitude for God Almighty doing good to humanity and to the world. No sen lechem lechol basar ki leolam chazdo. We are on the roof. Standing on a roof is like someone making a declaration, telling humanity, you know what? You know what? We're concerned about you. That's the Messianic era. And if it's about appreciation of the world, a lot of us, I think, appreciate a good view. A lot of us appreciate being somewhere where you could look out and it broadens the mind. Judaism is a very broad religion, right? There are things we do to preserve. There are things we do with an understanding that one day we have a much greater responsibility. And it's a night of gratitude. You know, I've mentioned in the past, there's a Pasuk in Eicha, where we cry out, Hisbiani, the God Almighty satisfied me, Bamerorim, with bitterness. Hirvani, he filled me with Le'ana, wormwood. And the Midrash tells us that you should know, the Hisbiani bimromim, when was I satiated with bitterness? That was the Seder night. When did he go ahead and fill me with this le'ana, with this wormwood, on Tisha B'Av? That's why the two are linked, by the way. Some explain, which I don't know how confident we should be with this explanation, that the egg on the Seder plate is to remind us of Tisha B'Av. No, perhaps not, but so the idea that we use this verse to tell us that we have a Tisha B'Av is because, you know, when you eat on the Seder night, it's supposed to be that the flavor remains from the matzah, from the Korban Pesach. When a person walks away from the Seder and that which satisfies him, that which completed his meal was the bitterness, if your aftertaste of your Seder is maror, that's a problem. That leads to a Tisha B'Av. When we have a Seder night, yes, there are many, many messages and many things we want to transmit to the next generation. We cannot allow the bitterness to be the core of our Jewish existence. If we transmit to the next generation that Oy Shvelzu Zaynayid, right? I heard that in New York, there was a fellow that worked many, many years in the Jewish neighborhood for the grocery store, and he would deliver all the goods. For many, many years, a fellow came from Harlem, and he became very, very close to the Jewish community. And after decades, you know, he became familiar with many of the terms that were used in Yiddish. So when he would schlep up groceries in Williamsburg to the fourth floor, he would plop it down on the table and he would say, Oy, shver zu sein agoy. That's what the worker would say. And I think we all understand that if our attitude is, you know what, this Judaism is a pain, it's a burden, it's maror. I can go ahead and eat where others eat. I can socialize with others. I'm limited with what I could consume. I'm limited with what I could do with my life. If that's the flavor the next generation walks away with, that's a Tisha B'Av. If, on the other hand, it's a Seder that we walk away with the flavor of royalty, of the Afikoman, that we're special. The flavor, by the way, of the Hallel on the roof, where I feel, you know what? I think about humanity. I will teach humanity about gratitude. The idea of Hodul Hashem Kitov is a Jewish message that humanity should hear. If that's what I walk away with, I don't have to worry about a Tisha B'Av. There won't be a Tisha B'Av because we're going to reach our destination. That's what I take as the messages of the Seder night. Now, a few days ago, I was walking by some people here in Shul, all masked, 6 feet apart, and I heard the following conversation. So which one are you going for? Moderna? Oh, not AstraZeneca. Oh, you went for Pfizer. Okay. That was a brief conversation. Now, I'm going to package that conversation and ship it back 1 year ago. 1 year ago, when there was uncertainty. I remember sitting on the front lawn or standing on the front lawn of someone that I'm looking at now, and it was in the summer last year, and he said, who knows how long it will take until there's a vaccine. My point is that, you know what, there's what to be grateful 1 year after the beginning of this pandemic. We see some light, right? While a year ago the message was, you know, one day there will be light, there's going to be an end. The idea that we could hear, Baruch Hashem, that we've merited to hear such a conversation about Pfizer, AstraZeneca, you know, Moderna, Baruch Hashem. And the healthy Jewish journey is one that we find those little things to be appreciative of in all situations, in all circumstances, right? Find something to be grateful for. Because the attitude of the Marar is not going to work. And the attitude of gratitude and thinking big is what does work. So that's basically our drasha. This was more of a drasha, nothing of the practical halacha was shared, even though that's mentioned in tradition. But hopefully we'll take something. What we should take more than anything else is a deep appreciation for the Seder night. And yes, there are moments that I wish I would be in Eretz Yisrael. And there are moments I wish that I would have one Seder, L'Shana, about one Seder, because, you know, that's the place to be, and that's the way to do it. But it's God's will that I'm here, it appears. And it's the will of God that we have two Zdorim. And let's maximize it. Let's do our part. You know, there's always that child within us that could learn more and be inspired. It's not a night of new information. It's a night to recharge those batteries, to appreciate what we are and what we have, and only better things. And Be'emes, Shana Haba, next year, it should be in Yerushalayim, Habnuya. It should be a year with better news. And thank you all for participating in this discussion here tonight. I would like to also thank our sponsors,